Make sure y'all stay on point with
The Puncher's Point.
¡Viva México, cabrones!
I said, hold up, wait a minute.
What is good, y'all? Welcome back to The Puncher's Point. As part of this whole Fatal Fury 3 straight days that we got going on, after Garcia versus Rolly Romero is all taken care of, the next day, us as boxing fans are blessed to have another good fight. Canelo Alvarez making his Saudi Arabia debut, and he's going to be fighting for the Undisputed Super Middleweight Championship, aka the 168-pound title, versus William Scull. Now, with all of that being said, Canelo Alvarez used to be the 168-pound champion, the undisputed 168-pound champion. However, we all know how this stuff goes. Sanctioning bodies get into the way. They tell you have to face this guy. You don't face them, they strip you. With that being said, in this case, it was the IBF title. They decided that they were going to strip Canelo Alvarez because he didn't want to fight his mandatory at the time, which is William Scull. So now William Scull is the IBF champion. So now, all of a sudden, Canelo has no choice but to get that undisputed championship back. And if he can go in there and he beats William Scull, then all of a sudden the realm of possibilities are all up to Canelo at that point, whether he wants to fight Terrence Crawford, Chris Eubanks Jr. I know that he was kind of in the mix. Like I said in the Eubank Jr. kind of Ben post-fight episode, there were rumors about it swirling before, and then obviously those rumors got shut down. But overall, if Canelo Alvarez can become undisputed at 168 again, then overall we're talking about a whole different ball game. We're talking about him being able to pick and choose his fights again, which could be beneficial as fans, or it could be a disadvantage as fans, depending on where he goes with that. But with that being said, we're going to talk about Canelo Alvarez. We're going to talk about William Scull and whether or not if he even has a chance, if he's being overlooked. And we're going to talk about the betting odds, predictions, all that type of stuff. So make sure y'all continue to stay tuned into this episode. With that being said, let's start off with the king, the face of boxing, Canelo Alvarez. When we're looking at strengths of Canelo Alvarez, I mean, let's be real. This guy has power on top of power. Now, I know what y'all are going to say. He hasn't had a knockout in like the last 5 or 6 fights. I understand. However, if you go back and you look at the previous fights, his power is overwhelming. His power is his pressure. To me, that would be the biggest strength for Canelo Alvarez is the way he's able to pressure opponents and get them up against those ropes. The other thing about Canelo Alvarez is Canelo Alvarez isn't the type of fighter to get caught clean too often. And the reason why is because Canelo Alvarez is also very, very composed. You see, from the second that bell rings, Canelo Alvarez is usually 90% of the time, the only 3 times I can think of where Canelo Alvarez didn't have this factor was against Floyd Mayweather Bivol and the first time against Triple G. Other than that, Canelo Alvarez is always controlling the pace. He is always controlling how a fight is going to go. What I do love about Canelo Alvarez, and I've said it many, many times when I've given his strengths and weaknesses, is he will hit you anywhere and everywhere. I mean, if he wants to hit you in the head, he can do that. If he wants to hit you in the body, he can do that. But everybody keeps on forgetting he can hit you in those arms too. And I'll never forget him fighting Callum Smith. And I'll never forget when he was fighting Callum Smith and he was hitting him constantly in the arm to the point where Callum Smith's arm was busted up. I think he tried to do the same thing to Bivol as well. And let me tell you something, Canelo Alvarez, with the power that he has, you don't want to get hit nowhere when it comes to Canelo Alvarez. The other thing I like about Canelo Alvarez too is his jab. I really, even if it doesn't land completely home, what I love about Canelo Alvarez, he's constantly disrupting the guard with that jab. And that's what he's been doing throughout his entire career. He has some very, very underrated defense. I will say that right now, because when we talk about Canelo Alvarez, we always talk about his offense. We always talk about the pressure that he puts on guys. We always talk about the power punches that he has. But we never ever talk about his defense. And even though he is kind of flat-footed, which we'll get to a little bit later in the weaknesses, what makes him so good defensively is how he's able to go into a fight, stay in the pocket, and he's able to use some head movement. He's able to basically get out of harm's way. He's able to keep his guard up. He's able to be as aggressive as he is on offense without dropping his guard or without being careless on defense. And I do believe that when he did fight Floyd Mayweather, that was the learning lesson for him to become a better defensive fighter because I believe after that fight he fought Kirkland and you saw a completely different Canelo Alvarez. You saw how much more he improved defensively and you just saw overall how he was able to take that next step after that loss. And then he went up and he fought Dmitry Bivol. And then Dmitry Bivol obviously ended up outclassing him in that fight. But even from the Dmitry Bivol fight, staying at 168 pounds, you could tell that he learned a lot from that fight. With that being said, the other thing about Canelo Alvarez that you really got to watch out for, to me, I think his biggest punch is his hooks. I mean, you can go back and look at the Amir Khan fight. You can go and you can look at the knockdown he had on Edgar Berlanga. You can look at how he knocked down Jaime Munguia, or how he was dominating Jaime Munguia. In my opinion, Canelo Alvarez, he really be laying in with those hooks. And so many guys walk up to Canelo Alvarez with the same approach. He's never met nobody like me. I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna dominate the fight. I'm gonna control him. I'm gonna beat Canelo. And the problem is this: you're not. That's just the simple reality of it. You are not. Unless your name is Floyd Mayweather, Dimitri Bivol, or a prime Triple G, you can't go in there thinking that you're just gonna dominate and control Canelo Alvarez, because that's not how the fight's gonna work. These fighters, they go into the fight with the same mindset. It's either two things. They either completely trash talk Canelo and disregard him, or they give him way too much respect. It's always been a dream of mine to fight Canelo. You know, he's obviously a hero. He's a legend. He's a GOAT. I just want to go in there and have a fun fight. Stop all that. I don't want you guys disrespecting the guy, but I don't want you guys walking into a fight just kissing his ass. That's not what I want to see. What I want to see is y'all have the confidence to go in there and say, look, I believe I'm gonna win this fight, respect to Canelo, but come May 2nd, it's time to throw down. And that's what I need to see from William Scull. Enough of this trash talking BS. Enough of this, over respecting BS. What I need y'all to do is go in there and absolutely completely give Canelo a fight. And the way you're gonna do that is not trying to knock him out, not trying to take his head off. We'll get to those a little bit later in the keys to victory. For me, what I realized about Canelo getting back on track is a lot of these guys just think they're going to go into this fight and they're going to dominate him. And that's not the case, because what ends up happening is these guys, they bite a little more off than what they can chew. And then once they realize how strong Canelo is, once they realize how much of a bull Canelo Alvarez is, they're able to go in there and basically find out that Canelo Alvarez ain't going to let you control the pace. He's not going to let you control the range. He's not going to let you control anything. So I feel like with Canelo, one of his biggest strengths is being able to control a fight from round 1 to round 12. He can knock you out. He can also go 12 rounds. So this is a very, very hard fighter to defeat. However, he has been defeated before. So what are the weaknesses to Canelo Alvarez, and how do you beat him? Well, for me, you could take the Dimitri Bivol approach or the Floyd Mayweather approach, and I do think that is the best approach to take, unless you're somebody like a Triple G, who is just ruthless, fearless, no remorse, and all boxers believe they are that, but there hasn't been too many Triple Gs in history. Unless you're that type of fighter, it's best that you do take the approach of a Bivol or a Floyd Mayweather. What I found out about Canelo Alvarez is, if you got footwork, if you got foot movement, if you are a guy that constantly is using the entire ring, and you're basically going in there and you're giving Canelo Alvarez quick punches, that's his weakness. In my opinion, I believe that everything needs to be set up with the jab. And I believe when you have a chance to go into the inside, you got to hit him with bunches. You see, my keys to victory for Jaime Munguia defeating Canelo Alvarez was 3 punches and bunches. And he did that very, very well. The only problem was Canelo Alvarez would just dominate on the inside. And I still believe that fight was a lot closer than what a lot of people think. I still think y'all need to go back and watch that fight, because in my opinion, Canelo Alvarez and Jaime Munguia was a very, very close fight. And I do think that is an approach that you can use to defeat Canelo, but I think it's a better approach that you kind of look at what Canelo's giving you and you take advantage of that. You see, when Bivol was in the ring with him and Floyd Mayweather was in the ring with him, if you noticed, they would go into the inside, land 2-3 punch combinations and slip out. Those are the fighters that really frustrate Canelo Alvarez. The ones that he can't cut the ring against. The ones that aren't going to make it a brawl with him. The ones that aren't going to go and try to make it a war with him. Canelo Alvarez wants you to get into the war fire with him. He wants you to go one-on-one. So when a fighter is able to land 1-2 punch combinations, constantly use the jab to disrupt him, and he has to keep on working around that jab, that's when it becomes a problem for Canelo. The other thing about Canelo, too, is I believe that if you can go to 12 rounds, if you are a conditioned fighter, I believe you got a good chance of beating Canelo Alvarez. It's just a matter of what skills you're going to use. Triple G did a lot of great work on the inside against him. So, and what I noticed in the Berlanga fight later on in the rounds, Berlanga was able to get some attacks off on him, and maybe it was because Canelo was underestimating him towards the later rounds. Maybe he just didn't really care. I remember there was one point in that fight where he was kind of just walking away from him, shying him off, and Edgar Berlanga hit him with a good clean shot. So there are times where I feel like Canelo Alvarez can let his foot off the gas just a little bit, but Canelo Alvarez is a pro to not let that get into the way of him losing a fight. Now, obviously, Edgar Berlanga hit him with the best shot he could, and Canelo Alvarez was standing up. Canelo Alvarez has a chin. That's been proven years ago. I said it. If Golovkin, with the shots that Golovkin was hitting him with, if Golovkin couldn't knock him down, ain't nobody knocking down Canelo Alvarez anytime soon. So, with that being said, Canelo Alvarez don't really have too many weaknesses. He is flat-footed, and I do think that is something that you can use to your advantage. If you have a guy who's on his toes, who's able to move around and have the mobility needed to defeat a Canelo Alvarez, you can make it work. It's just a matter of, are you going to be able to make it work? Are you going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to put yourself in a box, which also means not putting yourself against the ropes in the corners and all those types of things. But for me, I believe Canelo Alvarez's biggest weakness, because he doesn't have many, but I believe his biggest weakness is mobility. I believe if you can find a fighter who is mobile, you can find a fighter who is able to use the entire ring and is able to take advantage of the times where he opens up, is able to use that jab pretty well, and a guy who can also protect himself, because that's the biggest thing when you go into the ring with Canelo Alvarez. Even if he doesn't knock you out, he still has the power to knock you down. So I believe if a fighter can protect themselves, use the whole entire ring, and basically just go in there and not test their limits against Canelo Alvarez, I believe that's the fighter that's going to beat Canelo Alvarez. Which brings me to William Scull. William Scull. Here's where it gets really interesting, okay? So not many of us have heard of William Scull. And I'm gonna go on record and saying I still don't think he deserved that IBF belt. I know he ended up winning it by having a fight for the vacated IBF title, but to be honest with you, I don't think he did enough to earn a spot here. If you can now look, nobody has the resume of Canelo Alvarez in today's game. Nobody does. However, if we're looking at William Scull, we got to ask ourselves the question, well, if we're going to be real with ourselves, what did William Scull do to get here? And the real answer is nothing. But here's where I believe we're underestimating William Scull. Because I got this from Showbiz the Adult. I was watching one of his reels, and he's right. We did not hear too much about William Scull. So the problem that we're having here is we just think this guy's a bum because we haven't heard of him. When in reality, we're just uneducated and misinformed about William Scull. William Scull, let me tell you something about William Scull. William Scull has the tools to beat Canelo. Actually, I'll go on record and saying he has a better shot at beating Canelo than Berlanga did, than Jaime Munguia did, than Caleb Plant did, because in my opinion, William Scull has the mobility and the movement to confuse Canelo, to put Canelo into some holes. And let's suppose William Scull goes in there and he loses. Here's my prediction. I believe William Scull is going to expose more holes in Canelo's game. Now, since Canelo Alvarez is getting a little bit older, he's not too old, obviously, but regardless, he's not, in my opinion, Canelo Alvarez is kind of going down a step a little bit, even though he's still dominant enough to control that 168-pound division. It's not the same Canelo, in my opinion. I do believe that he's hitting that Manny Pacquiao era, that Floyd Mayweather era, where they're kind of getting older and they got to rely more on ring IQ and instead of athleticism. I believe that's where Canelo's heading. But regardless of that, Will Williams Scull. First thing I'm gonna say is William Scull. What I really like about him, he's able to use every single inch of that ring. You see, William Scull, he's very, very good at moving around. He's a very athletic fighter, so he relies a lot on his athleticism. He relies a lot on his quickness. The one thing about William Scull, he has this pull right counter that he throws, and it's like a right overhand right or like a right straight, where a guy feels like he has William Scull measured, and he goes for an attack, and William Scull will just pull that right counter and he will hit guys with it. And early in his career, he knocked down a lot of guys with it. Now, William Scull, he's 23-0, but he's not a knockout artist. But that right counter is definitely something to watch out for. The other thing about William Scull is he's very elusive. You see, what I mean by that is William Scull is very good at making a fighter believe they're right in the middle of them and slipping out. And this is what I mean when I say a lot of us have been overshadowing William Scull. A lot of us are uneducated or misinformed on William Scull. William Scull, like I said, has the tools to beat Canelo Alvarez. And I do believe that the elusiveness and I do believe that his defense is going to be a big part of that. He's very, very good head movement. He has very, very good head movement. He's very good at cutting angles as well. And this is why this makes it such an interesting fight. Because Showbiz, even he said it could be a possible upset. Like, what if William Scull does upset Canelo Alvarez because we're just underestimating him because we really ever haven't heard of him? I'm going to get to whether or not I believe Showbiz is correct about that later on in the episode. This obviously isn't a Showbiz episode, but that it really got me thinking. So, he's got the elusiveness. He's got the footwork. He's got that right hand counter. He's very sneaky at going to the body as well. You see, that's the thing about William Scull is William Scull, if you try to get into the inside with him, he's very good at just, putting a little punch to the body to where he lets you know that he's alert and he's aware. He's very good at finding those openings. So what are the weaknesses with William Scull? When you're fighting with your hands down constantly and you're constantly relying on that athleticism can only take you so far. See, there have been so many fighters who have had crazy athleticism, and then once they start getting a little bit older, that starts draining. Now, William Scull is obviously still young. He's in his prime right now, I would like to say. Who knows if he peaks from here on, but this is the best that William Scull is going to be. But there are many, many times where William Scull is holding that guard down and he's leaving his chin wide open. And if you know anything about Canelo Alvarez, the last thing that you want to do is to leave your chin open. That's the last thing you want to do against Canelo Alvarez because he will clip that chin. And when he does, you got to be able to handle it. Now, here's the thing. William Scull really hasn't been tested. That's another weakness. What are you going to do when you're into the fire with somebody like Canelo Alvarez? His last fight, he won by unanimous decision. It was a hard-fought victory. And even this guy, he would go into the inside. And what happened with William Scull is once this guy got into the inside and he would land 2-3 punch combinations, you start seeing William Scull back up. That's the other thing as well. I want to see a fighter also who can stay in the center of the ring, who's not going to get ruffled up. Because that's what Floyd Mayweather did to beat Canelo Alvarez. Even though Floyd Mayweather would kind of lure him on those ropes, like he would stay on those ropes and kind of lure him, you didn't see Floyd Mayweather getting backed up on the ropes. You didn't see Floyd Mayweather getting pushed back on those ropes. Floyd Mayweather willingly went on those ropes, and he would try to lure in Canelo. But the truth is, in order to beat Canelo, you need a guy who's going to be able to stand in the middle of that ring, who's going to stay in the middle of that ring and use their defense to frustrate Canelo. It's cool if you take a couple back steps and everything like that, but if you're constantly putting yourself against those ropes, that's a problem. And what I noticed about William Scull is when the going gets tough and the pressure gets hard, he puts himself on those ropes. And I do believe that in this fight, you can't do that. So, with that being said, what would be the keys to victory for Canelo Alvarez defeating William Scull? Well, I will say the first thing you have to do is cut the ring. You have to cut the ring. If you can't cut the ring, forget about it. You're not going to be able to win this fight. So I will say that is the first thing. Canelo Alvarez is going to have to cut the ring. And he has done it against some good fighters. He's done it against Charlo. He's done it against Berlanga. He's done it against Munguia. He's done it against a lot of good fighters. Caleb Plant is another one. But you're going to have to cut the ring, especially against William Scull. And I think it's going to be a little bit more of an effort to cut that ring on William Scull than it was those other guys because William Scull, it has more mobility than those guys. The second thing about Canelo Alvarez, I will say, is when you find that opening, really pressure him and make sure you clip that chin. That chin is going to be open for the taking. Just make sure you clip it. And then last but not least, force William Scull to throw in the fire. The other thing about William Scull that I completely forgot to mention is he's never content. So basically, if you hit him with a jab, he's coming right back with another straight. And that's a good thing. That's what you want to see from fighters. But the problem is with William Scull is he reacts too much to feints and he reacts too much to so many attacks. See, when he gets attacked, he wants to throw right back. If you do that against Canelo, Canelo's going to read that and he is going to clip you on the chin and it is going to hurt. So I will say the lack of patience is another thing. So the third key I would give to Canelo Alvarez is to basically force him to be impatient. Force William Scull to feel like he has to throw back. Force William Scull to feel like he has to fight fire with fire. And I believe that Canelo Alvarez does that. He's going to have an easy win. And I honestly think that could end in knockout. What's William Scull going to have to do to defeat Canelo Alvarez? Use your mobility and make sure you're controlling every single inch of that ring. So make sure you use your mobility. make sure you kind of frustrate Canelo by not staying in one spot. The second thing is that right counter is good, but I want to see him rely more on that left. I want to see him pull a couple tricks out of his sleeve because in order to defeat Canelo, you're going to have to do that. So for me, I would like to see him pull some tricks out of his sleeve with that left hand. So I would like to see him use the left hand a lot more, especially in counters, especially when, if you have a moment where Canelo misses or you have Canelo in a place where he doesn't need to be, use that left hand. And then last but not least, the one thing that I would say is keep your combinations quick, but throw them in bunches. So if you have a chance to go into the inside, hit with a nice 3-4 punch combination and slip back out. You don't want to make it a brawl. You don't want to make it a war. But you got to make sure that if Canelo has an opening, you got to make sure you take the best of that opening. So that's what I will say are the 3 keys for William Scull. Now, with that being said, we go to the betting odds. As of right now, Canelo Alvarez is a minus 3,000 favorite, while William Scull is a plus 1360 underdog. Those are huge, huge odds. But you know what? Out of all the fights that we have seen, this one is one where I think look, I'm not saying William Scull is going to win this fight, but if you want to put a little bet on that, you might as well. Because here's why I'm going to explain why. I'm not saying William Scull is going to win this fight, but it wouldn't hurt to risk it. It wouldn't hurt to put in a little bit of money on this. And I'm going to tell you why. So the most likely method of victory would be Canelo Alvarez at minus 195 to win by knockout or TKO. The least likely outcome, besides the draw, would be William Scull winning by points or decision. Here's why I love this so much. I would honestly, here's my prediction. I got Canelo Alvarez by... I got Canelo Alvarez maybe by I think I got Canelo Alvarez by another unanimous decision. But here's why I wouldn't mind you putting a bet on William Scull by decision. Because William Scull is not going to knock out Canelo. Actually, William Scull, for not being a knockout artist, his odds to knock out Canelo are higher than they are to defeat him by decision. In my opinion, if you want to put $5 on that, you might as well. Because if that happens, and the reason why I say it is because, like I said, he has the tools to defeat Canelo Alvarez. Do I think he's going to put them all together and create the full puzzle to defeat Canelo Alvarez? No. But the reason why I don't mind you putting the like a $5, like a mini bet on that William Scull to win by decision is because that's the only way William Scull can win. Now, again, if you want to bet the favor, if you want to put money on Canelo Alvarez, fine. But the problem is you're not going to win much money. But if you want to be risky, if you're looking for the upset, this is the one right here. Obviously, Lamont Roach, Tank Davis happened. That ended in a draw. And who knows, if it goes to decision, maybe, and somehow William Scull does look like he has a decisive victory, I still don't think they're going to give it to William Scull. But it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't hurt to put your money on a draw or a decision on William Scull because that's the only way he's going to be able to win. That's the only way he's going to be able to win. Do I think it's going to happen? No. What I do think is going to happen is this. I do think Canelo will clip him. I think Canelo will knock him down. I think he'll get back up. I still think William Scull is going to be mobile because he hasn't knocked out so many guys. He's used to going 12 rounds. I think he's going to be able to go 12 rounds with Canelo Alvarez. And I still think that because Canelo Alvarez has fought guys like John Ryder who went to 12 rounds. And that's a guy who shouldn't have gone to 12 rounds because he was tailor-made for Canelo to just knock out, and he didn't. So in my opinion, I do believe that William Scull is going to go to 12 rounds because he has the mobility, because he has more tools to get himself out of danger than a lot of guys that Canelo fought. So in my opinion, I do have Canelo Alvarez winning by unanimous decision. But William Scull has the tools, and if somehow, like Lamont Roach, for one night, if he can put them together, it wouldn't kill you to bet a draw or a William Scull decision. But overall, that fight is going to be taking place May 3rd. It's going to be taking place in Saudi Arabia. Like I said, Canelo Alvarez debut in Saudi Arabia. And it is for the undisputed 168-pound title, a.k.a. the Super Middleweight title. So with that being said, we just got to tune in and find out. I mean, again, shout out to Turki Al-Sheikh. But look, Turki Al-Sheikh, you got to give me a break, man. I mean, these are, let's see, 5 fights within the span of 3 days that I got to report. And it's a lot on me. But overall, I'm glad that we're getting these fights. I'm glad that we're getting good fights. And we're getting events that we can remember forever. he's obviously killing it with the fight being in the middle of Times Square. You got Naoya Inoue coming back to the United States on May 4th. So overall, I'm super excited at what's in store for boxing. These 3 days are going to be absolutely exciting, absolutely star-studded, and I just can't wait. But with that being said, make sure y'all continue to tune to the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all tune in after these fights for the post-fight breakdown to see how, and just overall, let me know how I did. Overall, just keep on tuning into the Puncher's Point. You know, we got some great things going on. You know, we got some fire episodes coming out. We got some great news updates, some post-fight breakdowns, some predictions. Whatever you need, the Puncher Point got it. If you are a boxing fan, the Puncher's Point got you. If you are trying to get into boxing, the Puncher's Point has you. If you want interviews, the Puncher's Point got you. And overall, I just need y'all to do one thing. Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point.